Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to Mohawk Motors. My name is Jason. It's a Saturday. I've got some time in the garage and I've got a project to work on. Let's get started. Okay, team. Now, if you can tell, you can probably guess, I'm working on the rear end for the silver single cab project. Now, I pulled this out of one of my parts trucks. This is a 10 bolt, 8.5-inch ring gear rear end. It came from the factory with 373 gears, which I verified by checking the tooth counts on the ring gear, and a G80 posi traction locking differential, also commonly known as the Gov Bomb, and we're gonna leave it in there. There's nothing wrong with this rear end. The G80 was working. It doesn't make noise, it doesn't have excessive backlash, there's nothing wrong with this rear end, so we're gonna use it in our truck, and I'm gonna do a slight improvement to it, and then we're just get it cleaned up. I've spent the last, the last 6 or so hours getting everything cleaned up. I pulled the brake assemblies off. The axle shaft's out, the housing has been wet sandblasted. I got my backing plates sandblasted and rebuilt with all new parking brake pieces. And obviously painted up. Those are all ready to go. Made sure the adjusters are all free, clean. Everything is doing what it's supposed to be doing here now. And I've got a pile of new parts for this thing. You can see what's left of the original backing plates. So I've got new backing plates, the rebuilt brackets and parking brake assemblies, new rotors, new calipers, a new rear differential cover because the original one was getting pretty thin in a few places, and new gear oil and paint. So I'm gonna get started. We're gonna get this thing put back together. I want to try to show you as much of this as I can, explain what I'm doing. If you've never taken one apart before, just do the opposite of what I'm about to do, putting it together. So yeah, let me get you set up here and let's get started on this thing. All right, guys, so this is the original brake caliper bracket to this rear end. I sandblasted it all off, got it cleaned up, rebuilt the parking brake assembly in here, got a new boot on the parking brake arm, and new shoes on the parking brakes itself. Ta-da! So this has to go on. The axle shaft has to be off in order to get this piece on and off. I've also got nice new dust shield backing plate. I guess this is technically a caliper bracket, not a backing plate. And this basically just slips together, kinda. Takes a little finagle bageling. Maybe. Can I do it without trashing my paint? Maybe not. There we go. There we go. Now, if you're doing this yourself, the backing plate, dust shield, it'll only fit on one way. The caliper brackets are the same on both sides, but you can see they have a little arrow here that points to front. So obviously that part goes towards the front of the vehicle. once you're there, you line it up. Just like so. And then you put your bolts in. I've got my factory bolts here. I sandblasted the heads to get all the crusty rusties off of them. Once I get them on here, I'll get a little paint on also. No sense in painting the heads of bolts that you're going to put on with an impact, because the impact is going to remove that paint for you. Just a little dab of anti-seize. There we go. You'll notice I have a rag stuffed in the end of the axle tube. I went ahead, when I pulled the axle shafts out, I checked my axle shafts to make sure they didn't have any pitting or galling or anything like that on them. I checked my bearings to make sure they all looked good. The rollers were all still smooth and round. No pitting or galling on those. That looks pretty good. Yep, okay. There we go, nice and tight. That piece is in. Now I've got my little, this is my little support bracket for my brake hose, because we are going to have disc brake rear, disc brakes on this rear. Get that snugged right back down. Go. That's back installed. Now I can slip my axle shaft back in. The seal looks good. No evidence of any leaking or any problems. And guys, I'm not replacing stuff that isn't broken. There we go. Axle shaft all the way in. Take our little C-clip over here. C-clip goes back in the end of the axle. Let's pull the axle out. That side's good. Not much to it. I spent more time cleaning stuff than it'll actually take me to put this whole thing together. So, that's got this side back together for now. Let's do the other side, and I'll give you guys a little bit closer view of what I'm doing. Okay, so we're on the passenger side now. Same parts, same deal. This is my dust shield / backing plate. Again, these are the same on both sides. And you can see here, there's 4 bolts here. And you see right here, we've got a little raised lip. And this hole is flat, little raised dimple. Now that means that your caliper bracket will only fit on there one way. because it has little recesses in the back. See how that hole has a counter bore? That hole does not. Counter bore does not. So your caliper bracket and your backing plate, they'll only fit together one way. And same as the other side, this caliper bracket has a marking to front. So we will put that pointed towards the front, and we'll bolt it all back together. I gotta take that little brake hose arm off, and then I'll show you. Okay, the little arm is off. So now I take my bracket, or my backing plate, slip it over there. Push my little, ooh, this is tricky one-handed. There we go. Okay, and you can see my little raised sections in the dust shield slip into the counter bores and the caliper bracket. Now this, again, we want our front arrow pointed towards the front. So this side goes like so. Ta-da! Our little front arrow will be pointed towards the front. Our calipers will be in alignment with each other. Oh, don't forget to peel your masking off of your parking brake shoes, Jason. In case you can't tell, guys, I masked my parking brake shoes because I put the whole parking brake assembly together and then painted it. So I got that. We got our bolts. A little dab of anti-seize. And get it started in the hole one-handed, if you can. There's one. Two. Three. As always, team, start them all before you tighten any. There we go. One. Two. There we go. And I just remembered, I want to splash a little paint in here before I put the axle shaft in. So I'll have to pull that other axle shaft back out and do that. But for this side, okay, just got a little rust converting primer. There we go. Now I can slip our axle shaft in, just like we did on the other side. Again, team, I checked the seals, I checked the bearings, I checked the shafts themselves. I don't see anything showing any problems or signs of future problems. I'm honestly more likely to create a leak or a problem replacing parts that don't need to be replaced than I am to have one of these give me an issue. So I left it alone. So you can see I've got my axle shaft pushed all the way in here, and it comes over right down in there. There's a little notch in the end of the axle shaft. So now I can take my C-clip and I can stick it down in just like that. and then slide the axle shaft out. When I put the center pin back through the differential, that will hold the axle shaft out and keep it locked in where it belongs. All right, now over here on the other side where I forgot to paint my bolt heads, I need to take the axle shaft back out. I'm gonna push it in, like so. And you can see my seat clip there. Take a magnet. Sometimes, oh, she's spinning on me. Sometimes that happens. There we go. I'll see if my magnet will grab it real quick. There it is. There's my magnet and my C-clip. Now I can slide my axle shaft out. And I'll scrape that little bit of cardboard off and hit this with a little paint too. Okay, so the center pin in the differential. I've got my pin here. It actually looks really good. No excessive wear or anything like that. And I've got my little hole to the top. Now this is the side where the retaining bolt goes in. There's another hole drilled through from this side that this little pin goes in to hold everything in place. Now, sometimes this takes a little bit of wiggling to get everything lined up because we're talking about really tight tolerances here. There we go. Get our bolt in. Ta-da! Now we just tighten our little retaining bolt. Guys, I know of a fairly common issue with these things. That is sometimes this bolt, the threaded part breaks off. When that happens, it makes it extremely difficult to get it out of the center pin and thus almost impossible to get the axle shafts out. I wish I had a trick or a way to handle that, but usually if that's the case, you have to resort to destructive methods. I'm just going to tighten this bolt back down. She goes to the spec of good and tight. It's a 5/16 head bolt. It's not a huge bolt. So we're going to give her that, and then we're going to give her the Greek impact. That's all she needs right there. And while we're here, I can show you. This is the guts of our G80 differential. And this is the part that 9 times out of 10 fails or leads to failure. This little guy right here, you can see it spins when the axles are not turning at the same speed. And the way this thing works is as this spins, once it spins fast enough, this little lever here, see how that, can you see it? There's a little lever right here. It flings out. There's one on both sides, so it works in both directions. When that flings out, it catches a hold of this lever right here and pushes on it. When it pushes on it, that turns another gear over here on the side that turns a ramp, and that ramp squeezes some clutch packs against the side gears and gives the locking limited slip action. And the thing that fails on these things is all these tiny little gears and stuff over here. If you get enough difference in wheel speed before this engages, instead of the pawl flying out, grabbing the actuator and pushing on it, the pawl flings out, it grabs the actuator and strips all the little teeth off of that side gear. So 9 times out of 10, they fail and basically just fail and become an open differential. But the ones that you hear about, the reason this thing has the nickname of Gov Bomb is that thing flings out and it scatters all these parts all over the place inside the differential. And once you have hunks of metal floating around in your differential, it's usually not long until the ring and pinion try to eat it and grenade. So they're great for street driving and minimal difference in traction. You know, you're pulling off the shoulder, one side is in gravel, one side is in asphalt. That little bit of traction differential it'll make up for. Maybe you're on an icy driveway and you're just trying to get going, gently applying throttle, it'll engage and not harm anything. But you know, let's say you're on one side is on the icy road and one side is on dry asphalt and you just mat it. That sudden and huge difference in wheel speed, that's what will destroy these things. So in most normal road use applications, they're great. They work really well. But as soon as you get into like adverse weather conditions, off-road situations, things like that, it's just a ticking time bomb. It was never designed or engineered to handle those kind of stresses. All right, that's enough on my G80 tangent. I've got a new cover. The old one was getting pretty thin in a few spaces, and this will look better. It wasn't expensive. I'm gonna sit it in, on, and bolt it down. I'm not gonna seal it up yet. I basically just want this on here so I can paint it. I've got some bolts. The heads on the original bolts were all odd sizes and not right because they've corroded. So I've got some new bolts here. I like these with the washers on them. They spread the clamping force a little bit better, which I think it helps a little bit in keeping your rear end sealed up. I'm just gonna snug these down. At this point, I really just wanted to keep the paint out of the differential. I'm not worried about keeping oil in yet. After I paint it, I'll take this all back off, get it sealed up, and then we'll fill it up with oil. There we go. Nice added bonus with the new differential cover. This one has a fill plug, which is really nice. And it came with a new magnet, so I don't have to jack around trying to clean the old magnet. So that's that. Let's get this thing set up so I can paint this sucker. Well, you can see I already started painting. I forgot to hit the record button. But I went ahead, I decided to just seal up the differential cover. I don't need to get back in there for anything. Everything inside looks good. The axle shafts are back in place. I shouldn't need to take them off again. So I sealed that back up, new gasket and some RTV just to help it stay where it belongs. I'm on to painting, obviously. I'm using a product, this is called Chassis Saver. And this is the satin black finish. I've used this stuff before and I really like it. It's not cheap, but it does a really great job. It's a self-leveling oil-based paint. It's called Chassis Saver. So it's meant to be used on the chassis of the vehicle, the frame, suspension components, things like that. It covers really well. You can paint it right onto bare metal. There's no primer necessary. And I just like this stuff. I've used it before. I like the way it looks when it's dry, and it's really not difficult to put on. I'm just using a cheap brush and just getting it in all my little nooks and crannies here. I will tell you, you notice I'm wearing gloves. This stuff, if you get it on your skin, if you get it on anything really, it is hard to get back off. So thus my gloves, and I really recommend if you're gonna be doing this, you should wear some gloves too, because the only thing I found that gets this stuff off is gasoline, or probably paint thinner would work too. But man, you don't want to be putting that stuff on your hands. So nothing super exciting here, just a guy rubbing paint on an old axle. And yeah, I'll get it done. I'll bring you back when I'm finished and show you how it looks. Paint is probably going to be all I get through for today. All right, everybody, she's all painted up. Still wet, so it's a little shiny, but as it dries, it'll flatten out to a satin finish. I think I got all my little drips and drops cleaned up, so it should be good. I think this thing is gonna look nice under the back of the truck. We've got some other, obviously we still have our brake rotors and brake calipers and brackets for it too, but I'm not gonna put those on until after the black paint is dry. So that's it for now. Not a time for today. Hopefully I can pick up on it tomorrow. Paint should be dry by then and we can button this thing up. So I left off getting it painted. The paint is all dry and cured now, and man, I'm really happy with how this came out. I think it looks great. So it's gonna be, it's gonna look good under this truck. Now I've got driver's side brake rotor, passenger side brake rotor, and I sprung the big bucks on brand new powder coated calipers and brackets, brand new brake pads. But if you notice, these are not the same as what I took off. So we're doing a little bit of a brake upgrade on this thing on a budget, right? I want to make it a little bit better. I don't want to spend a fortune on like a Brembo or Bear or some other aftermarket big brake kit. So we can use some bigger brakes from a factory application that'll make this thing stop just a little bit better. We're gonna have 2 piston calipers instead of single piston calipers. That will increase our clamping force. We're also going to have the cross-drilled and slotted rotors. So let's get started putting this together, and I'll explain to you guys what these parts are from and how we're making it work. All right, so our brake caliper bracket, our parking brake shoe, all of that stuff matches the stock application. This is from a 2002 Silverado 1500. So all these parts are 2002 Silverado 1500. The dust shields, the caliper bracket, the parking brake stuff, all of that factory to this axle. Now, what we're upgrading here is we're going to be using parts from I believe it's a 2003 to 2006 Suburban. And Suburbans also could have come with single piston calipers, but the nicer Suburbans came with dual piston rear calipers. The reason I say we're using all the parts, not just the calipers, is the calipers and the caliper brackets obviously are different than the single piston caliper and caliper bracket. And the brake rotor is also a little bit different from the single piston brake rotor. So 2003 to 2006 Suburban 1500 with dual piston rear brakes. Those are the parts that we're putting on here. And like I said, it gets us a dual piston caliper as opposed to the single piston. And we've got these rotors that have the correct amount of offset to be centered in the caliper and bracket. I've just got some old lug nuts here, some spares from something that I'm just going to snug them on so they're holding our rotor in place. Okay, I've got my caliper. And these are pretty nice. They were a little bit more expensive than just a plain non-powder coated caliper, but I think it'll be worth it to have these on here. It's going to make this thing so nice. So we're going to get it bolted up. I've got my original caliper bracket bolts. Cleaned them up in the blaster. One. And two. Bolts right up. And guys, I don't think I mentioned this, but the caliper bracket on these disc brake rears, the 1500 trucks and SUVs from 2000 until 2006 and 2007 Silverado Classic, those brackets are the same. Guys, so I'm going through editing this and I realized that I used the term caliper bracket to describe two different parts. The red part that I'm attaching right now is the caliper bracket, and those are different depending on which brake caliper you have. The part that I'm referring to saying they are all the same on these 10 bolts from 99 to 07 Classic is the caliper mounting bracket. That's the part that I sandblasted and spray painted black that also holds the parking brake shoes. The drum brakes are a different bracket, but all the disc brake brackets are the same. There's our bracket. Now we'll take our slide off. Maybe. I need a wrench. There we go. Okay, so we can hang that down right there. Keep our bolt where we need it. Now for brake pads, I just went with a Bendix Premium semi-metallic brake pad. Ceramics would be a little bit better, but ceramics tend to be noisier. Especially ceramics can be, they can squeak a lot when they're cold before they get warmed up. So we're just going with a semi-metallic on this one. I want quiet brakes. Our little slides. To make sure everything's fully seated. And then we've got our little anti-rattle, anti-make noise guy in here. Maybe. Yeah, there she goes. Okay. Now we need some pads. Now, typically, sometimes there's an inner and an outer, so those two are the same. These two are the same. So we have an inner and an outer for both sides, because we have two different styles of pads. One, two, there we go. Flip our caliper back up. There we go. Okay, there's one side. All assembled and ready to go. Important note here, folks, when you're putting calipers on, especially these rears, make sure that your bleeder screw is at the top of the caliper. The bolt holes are symmetrical, so it is possible to put the right caliper on the left side, but doing that, your bleeder will be pointed toward the ground and make it pretty much impossible to bleed your brakes. So make sure you check where that bleeder is. Now let's repeat the process on the other side. Same thing. Driver's side, same process. Get our first. In case you're wondering, these are just stock lug nuts that I'm putting on backwards. So the flat side pushes against the rotor, holds it flat against the axle. Now a caliper and bolts. Get those snug. Get our caliper tips down. Like so. There. Our little anti-vibration clip in the caliper. Good. Make sure I should double check this one down here. Whoops. Now, let's do the brake lines. We can do our flexible line from the caliper to the bracket. And I think I even have my hard lines that we can run too. All right, so I figure I'll just start on this side. Now I've got these nice stainless steel brake lines. These are, I ordered a whole kit from sstubes.com. They do stainless steel brake lines. This is from their fine lines division. And I ordered a whole kit. So it's got all the lines for the rear. You'll see them all here in a minute. And I'm just gonna start over here on this side. I'm gonna get the new line put on to the new caliper. Now, this is just kind of funny, but the lines came with new clips and new copper washers. The caliper came with all clips and copper washers, but neither of them came with a new banjo bolt. Fortunately, the banjo bolts on the calipers were in good shape, and they're the same ones, like they're not anything different or special, anything like that. So I was able to clean them off in the blaster and then get them all cleaned up, blown off, and ready to be installed on here. I just think it's funny, you know, all these new brake parts, nobody gives you a new banjo bolt, sold separately. Remember those commercials? Everything's sold separately. All right, so I'm just gonna give it a little snug here. And then a trick I learned from an old timer is when you're doing brake fittings with the copper washer, once you get it good and tight, give it a tap or two with a hammer, and that'll let you get just a little bit tighter, and it helps ensure that those copper washers are crushed and are gonna seal well. And sometimes I do it twice, just to make sure. Yep. There we go. Now we're good and tight. I'll get my new clip out of the bag here. I will say that SS Tubes, I am pretty impressed with the quality of their product and their customer service. I had a little issue with my order when it showed up. Oh, is this the wrong one? And they got it sorted out for me, lickety split, no problem. So, there we go. Get our little clip pushed in. A little persuasion helps. you're so close. You can do it. There she goes. Yeah, we got a little play in our line there. Ta-da! Perfect. All right. Let's, will this stay in there? Keep that sealed up for me? It will. All right, let's do the same thing on the other side. And here's our other side. Same process. Different angle. The different angle makes it interesting for you, right? Yeah. Banjo bolt in. Tappy tap. Snug tighter. Tap. Skosh tighter. Satisfied with that. Get our clip out. Clip comes over. Man, they're even indexed nicely. There we go. Just a little. Just a little. There we go. There we go. Okay, satisfied with that. Those look good. I'll put my little cap in here. All right, let's do the hard lines. Okay, so I've also got a stainless hose that connects from the axle up to the frame. Cleaned off the bolt. Put a little anti-seize on it. There we go. Now our hard lines. You have a short one. Hey, why is this? Uh-oh, why is that not the right size? Maybe a little fine tuning necessary? Okay, we can do that. We can do a little fine tuning, that's not a big deal. Let's get that tightened up just a skosh. Let's tighten this up a little, and this over here. Oh, there we go, that's what we need. Oh yeah, no big deal. Easy peasy. All right, let's get a little dab of anti-seize on those. Okay, just a dab of anti-seize. Go, got that one started. started. There we go, nice and tight. This side. And there we go, also tight. Let's do the long side. I'll test fit first. Oh yeah, that's nice. This into position. There we go. Snug, there we go. Just give this little titchy touch. That'll line up with the bracket. Oh, guys, that's beautiful. Man, I'm impressed. That's a nice kit. They didn't sponsor me. Like, I paid full price just like any other customer, and I'm not upset. That is a nice kit. That fit right into place. Tiny little tweak. I mean, that could have just been from bouncing around in the box and shipping. I like that they've also got the guards on it, just like factory. Like, I'm pretty impressed. That's a nice brake line kit. SS tubes, fine lines, very nice. Good job on, good props to you guys. Way to go. Well, everybody, I took a few minutes, buttoned up the little odds and ends that are really worth, I don't think really worth showing you. And it's all finished up. So we've got all painted, all new stainless steel brake lines, everything cleaned up, fresh, all the hardware cleaned up in the sandblaster. I got my little brake line and parking brake cable bracket hooked on there. I got this little brake line bracket put back on. I'm really happy with how those calipers and brackets look, especially the wheels I have that I'm planning to put on this thing. They've got big windows in them, so you're definitely going to be able to see the calipers and the brackets, and these are going to look nice. So yeah, I didn't do anything with the pinion yet because I'm pretty confident I'm going to have to take the pinion off of the old rear and put it onto this one, just like I did on my blue single cab short bed. So when I do that, I'll sandblast that pinion, get it all cleaned up and painted before I put it onto this housing. Won't be a big deal. And then this one will be all ready. So yeah, one more look. I'm pumped. I think that looks good. And this is the sort of stuff that excites me. Like, these are the little details that most vehicles, nobody ever does anything with it. And that's going to set this truck apart when I'm all finished. Every little detail is going to be as good as it can be. And hopefully that'll help me get a good price for it when it's time to sell. Because I've got a lot of hours into this thing already. And we don't even have a rolling chassis again yet. So that's it for this one, everybody. I hope you enjoyed. I appreciate you watching, commenting, all your interaction and support. And I'm looking forward to continuing on. The only thing left now is we got to get the chassis from here over to this lift so I can get it lifted up. Got some suspension modifications to make, and then we're going to get this whole frame painted and cleaned up so it'll look good also. But that's another video. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed. And until the next one, everybody, take care.